Good morning, Miko, if you're there and can hear me.
I'm here.
Hi there. How are you doing?
I'm fine.
Excellent.
Coding away other stuff when here is nothing on. So is the plan to actually have a session or?
It is, but it's essentially a writing session. So we started last night and we drafted enough to get the statement paragraph and the 2 slides for the final session. And
Okay.
then this morning, while people are still have their heads in this, we just want to make sure we have a good outline for our more detailed reporting.
Okay.
So I think.
But this is an hour later now that you decided to start. Okay.
No, this has always been 11 to 1 is what's on the schedule. GMT.
I've been here 1 hour earlier, but it doesn't matter.
Okay.
I'm just like hacking away on another window and keeping this open until something happens. So now when something happens, I'm
okay.
here.
Yeah, no, this is if you go to the AOS agenda or whatever for April 2nd, all of the sessions start at 11 o'clock GMT.
Yeah, the issue is really just me not properly translating GMT to this time.
Yeah, no, it's a bit challenging me right now with all the time differences and changes and whatever. But so yeah, we just have like a Google Doc that we're working on, and we're going to try and just tighten that up before we all break away to our regular lives again.
Yeah.
Um,
So Barbara is here. Hello.
Yes, I'm here. Hi. I'm the monitor, chat monitor, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So all the organizers there. Very good.
Yes.
So for both of you, I don't know how engaged you need to be in the sense that last night when we did it, there was a relatively small number of people, about 10 of us, and we're just doing collaborative writing. So, we had times where we said, okay, everyone go off for 5 or 10 minutes and write in the Google document or whatever. So we'll just, play it by ear, as they say in English. Just, go with the flow and figure out how to do it. But it's not like the other sessions where, we're having presentations and formal dialogue and so on. So.
Yeah, of course. But do you think breakout rooms or something? I will be anyway here to organize these if you.
Yeah,
well, feels like it.
Yeah, we didn't use those yesterday because there was a small enough group, and we sort of
everybody wanted to share everything.
We encouraged only people who were wanting to actively co-write a document to attend. So we had a small enough group that we just stayed all together.
Good. But if you feel the need, just let me know.
Absolutely. So maybe we'll just, when we get started, we'll have a discussion with everybody and then go from there. We can then decide what's the best approach.
For me, it's not a problem. I dedicated those 2 hours to this session, so I'm ready to just follow what you are doing.
Yeah, and we appreciate that for sure, and we may well. I don't want to sort of make it any more complicated than it has to be. So anyway, it's been quite a marathon.
What is your time zone, if I may ask?
I'm in Eastern time in North America, so this has been a sleep-in day for me. The other 2 days I was up at like 3 o'clock in the morning, and then yesterday it was 3 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night straight.
So I guess it's much worse than a simple jet lag, right?
Yeah, it is actually, and the issue for me is I'm an academic, so we had a PhD defense yesterday, so that I had to do that in the middle, which was 3 hours long, and all of that. So that was a challenge, but I survived it like everyone else. So
yeah,
it's almost over, almost done. So
yep,
good job, guys, because I was impressed how this conference was moved so fast, so quickly, and so well online. and everyone from America or Japan are just waking up in the middle of the night to be online and moderate all those sessions. Yeah, that was impressive.
Yeah, I've been very impressed as well. It's actually, I think, increased participation. There are quite a few people in our group who would not have attended if it had been in Iceland because they couldn't travel for various reasons. So.
For me, it was much easier because I'm in Europe, only 2 hours difference to Icelandic time, so that's cool.
Okay, so we'll just see who comes on and we'll go from there.
No. Does it record these things separately? Like when you, Peter, have recording on as well, so.
It should record it to the web, to the cloud.
Yeah.
So I don't actually get the recording on my side.
Okay. I was just wondering. I haven't been a technician before, so I didn't expect that there are 2 clouds like blinking on the right side now, because I put up the recording was actually on in this room when I went into it.
Yeah,
So
I think it's set up
kept it going and thought, why not leave it there? But then I wondered when you came on that there came a second cloud.
Oh, interesting. Because I didn't touch anything. It should have been set up to just do automatic recording.
But it could be the explanation that when I made you co-host, I don't know if
That's
or not. So maybe it's just like now both, because I have to keep a microphone on so that through my session everything goes as audio into the recording.
Yes,
but
I think
this might mean that I can actually mute and then you are still on. So one of us has to keep like microphone.
Yeah, and I think the 2 recordings just means that both of us can control. So I now have a control that says pause, stop recording, and so on. So
yeah, good. It also means that now it doesn't complain to me when I was alone and I put mute on that no recording will be done because I'm muted. So this is practical. One of us has to have the microphone on, but not both of us for the recording to do something.
yeah, no, that makes sense. So for the moment, I'm just going to mute mine while I type.
Yeah, I keep mine open all the time. Don't worry about it. Or maybe I might warn you then before that I have to, something loud is happening in the background, and then I'll kind of ask you to keep the mic open. But my kids are now outside with my wife, so it's at least at the moment very quiet here.
Good morning, Shannon.
Good morning, Peter. Sorry, I'm a few minutes late joining this morning.
Okay. Okay, good morning. As with the last time, we're going to give a few minutes, maybe a few extra minutes for this one. I think we may have exhausted people, so I'm not sure if they're going to be here right on the hour. Good morning. We're just giving a few minutes to let people sign on.
Maybe in meantime, I can start with the script, which I should
Barbara, I wouldn't, because we probably don't have most of the people who will be here. So I think if we read it now, we just have to reread it.
Okay.
So I'll just give it. Last time we gave about 3 to 4 minutes, and then we.
So just let me know when.
Yeah,
Should I
will do.
Thanks.
Yeah, this is definitely meant to be a smaller session with only probably a few people doing the writing, but we'll see. I'm not sure if I'm expecting Mark to join, and maybe a couple others as well. I'm not sure about Ruth this time. There's Bill. Good morning, Bill. We're just giving it a few minutes to let people sign on.
Awesome. Good morning.
Yes, I have you people on mountain time to motivate me to get up in the morning.
It's easier for you, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's
Well, no.
a late 7 o'clock here.
Did you have an earlier session already today?
I did not. No, not today. So yesterday
Yeah.
and Tuesday I did.
I know Allison's been wanting to make every session, but in Alaska time is difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Actually, you just reminded me. I'm going to paste her email into our notes. Interesting. It's not coming up right away. I have way too many emails in my life, email addresses.
Do you want me to put it in the chat?
Yeah, if you could, because I don't know why it's not.
Yeah.
Okay, and then I'll just paste it into the doc. So I'd ask people just to bear with us here for a moment. And oh, sorry. Okay, yeah, that'll help. Actually, it'll help me find it. It's not coming up when I search. There it is. Okay. Okay, we're at 5 minutes after the hour. And so I'll just do this and then get started. I was expecting Mark to be here, but that's okay. We can just get going and hope that he joins. Okay, well, maybe we'll get our formal start going. And so Barbara is going to be kind enough to read our statement to get us going, and then we can go from there.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, and welcome. The circumpolar Arctic is the contemporary home to many different indigenous peoples. As researchers and others who are working or reside in the Arctic, we recognize these lands and waters as the mostly unceded traditional homeland of the indigenous peoples. It is the responsibility of each of us to learn, know, and gain better understanding of the indigenous people and cultures with which we engage. With that in mind, let's engage in open-minded community-building collaboration as described by the ISSW Code of Conduct shared in the chat window. Some logistics before we start the presentation. You joined with your camera off and your audio muted. If you unmute yourself at any time, please remember to remute after speaking. How to mute? If anyone is connected by phone, please press 6 if your phone does not have a dedicated mute button. Please keep your phone muted during the presentation and do not put us on hold. Why? We can all hear your typing and conversations when you aren't muted, and the hold button might cause distortion in the presentation. Please avoid the echo. If you have the option, please use the headphones or a headset. If you are on the phone, please turn your computer speakers all the way down. We can get an echo when the phone picks up your computer audio. See your controls by hovering your mouse at the bottom of the screen. You can chat and see the other participants via these controls. Have a question? Type your question in the chat window and they will be read out loud. Need help? Message the moderator via the chat tool or raise the hand tool, which is accessed by opening the participants window. Want to join the discussion? Unmute yourself and speak up, or raise your virtual hand and we will call on you, or you can send a chat message to the group everyone and the moderator will read the question out loud. For folks without mics, type into the chat and the chat monitor will read the question out loud. This presentation will be recorded. A video file, audio file, slides, and relevant links will all be available on the agenda tab on the AOS website. That's all. So Peter, I will pass it to you.
Great, thank you very much. Sorry, I just want to make sure I'm not muted. Excellent. Okay, you should all see my screen and see that I've just been typing away, working on the shared Google document. So today, as with the previous session last evening, GMT, our objective is to continue the writing process. So there are two processes really. One we're pretty much completed last evening, and that was to generate some slides or bullet points for slides that will be presented at the closing session of the Arctic Observing Summit that will happen in a few hours. And the second was to create a paragraph or to draft a paragraph that's submitted to a brief summary statement that will come out of the Arctic Observing Summit again in a few hours. So the request was to submit those by midnight, 1 o'clock, a.m. Greenwich Mean Time today. So I did that. We have maybe a small window to make some minor edits. However, those are getting close to ready to present. So we don't have a lot of flexibility there in terms of too much change. Certainly in length, it's very clear that the statement currently is too long. So we certainly cannot add any text to the paragraph. We can make some edits if we need to the slides that will be a little easier to implement. So that I think would be our first order of business, is to go through those. You can see on my screen that I've put them towards the end of the document, and then just for anybody who does not have it handy, I'll put the slide, sorry, I'll put the document URL into the chat window. So it's there if you need it. Then the second approach, or the second thing that we would plan to do going forward, is to be drafting our more detailed document. We have pretty limited time today. We're hoping to try and get it drafted, but I'm not sure that we can quite get there. But last night, what we had done, we spent quite a lot of time actually going through key points. So you can see them as I'm scrolling through the screen there. So we had started this with some key themes that I had noted through the 4 discussion sessions that we had for Arctic Observing Summit, Working Group 4. and we then discussed whether or not these made sense as important key points, and then had some discussion, recognizing some of them are fairly important and complex, and so would need some more discussion, some more additional information, and then eventually draft that into an actual prose and document. What I think I'd like to do, I had expected Mark Parsons to be on this morning, and he may join us. But the approach that we were taking yesterday, and I think we'll slightly modify it today, is listed here as the. Sorry, I'm just orienting myself in the document for the Parsons protocol here.
Oh, it was just a little higher.
Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to, there it is. So what we had done is we sort of were going through these key points, brainstorming on those, and then we would step away and have people spend some time on their own writing in a different section of the document, and then come back together, discuss, and then sort of revise. So I'd like to sort of do a variant of that, but one of the things I think we need to do maybe after some additional discussion is set out our outline. And so at the end of the document, I've set a section called Detailed Report Outline and Draft. And so what I'm thinking we can do there is one of the exercises we might do is if each person can try and go to these points that we've been discussing and try and boil each one down into a heading or a section. And then we could work in our discussion on nailing that down, so we at least have placeholder for those different topics that are described in a simple sentence. And then we can start going through and maybe vote on what we think needs the most additional discussion while we're all together. And then start building that out in terms of paragraphs and so on, or at least bullet points that we could then later turn to paragraphs.
This is Jonathan. So the there are some relationships among the points where it'd be helpful to step back for someone to create the outline, considering the best organization of the material, instead of individually us going through trying to just move each point individually over.
I agree. I just don't know that we have the time to do that. We could try that, but we also have a very hard deadline on it. So what I wanted to make sure is that there's nothing that we see as a major gap, and that also we just narrow down. And what I'm also thinking, Jonathan, maybe is when we have these individual headings, we can think about the overlap and the merging. But instead of what I found yesterday is when we're dealing with a lot of text, we're spending a lot of time discussing the nuances. And if we can sort of boil that down into sort of key concepts, then when we're doing the outline, we can say, yeah, these 2 or 3 points are actually maybe one point that we need to merge together. So I'm wondering if that would work.
You're definitely going to lead the session, or Mark if he comes on. But one thing we did flag yesterday were areas or topics that need a lot of wordsmithing, so to speak, or need to be clarified. Others were, kind of okay as is.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you want to defer that wordsmithing offline when people aren't able to discuss them, or maybe we should focus on those gnarly topics and as a group so we can get through them.
Yeah, I think that's fine. One thing I see, there are a couple of people on, I think now, who were not here last night. I don't think we have the time to go through in detail, but if they can be looking at the document and see if they see anything that are not part of the topics. And then, yeah, I mean, what we can do maybe then is start with those gnarly topics and then move on to, once we've had some time to work through those, start thinking about working at our outline, or make sure that, you know, all the topics that we have here in this kind of more detailed list are representative of our headings, and then also do some pre-sorting into categories, so high level. So I've sort of started that with labeling, you know, whether it's a community related thing or whether it's technical or somewhere in between, and so on, because we also need to think about the structure. So do you want to get us started in maybe what you're thinking in terms of the one of the gnarly topics?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
I was not volunteering to replace Mark, but
No, I'm not asking you to replace Mark, but you pointed this out, so I'm just saying, is there a particular gnarly topic that you're thinking we could start with?
yeah, there's several. Maybe just for people who were not here yesterday, we give folks a few minutes to look over the whole list. Sure. And then make particular note of the comments and things that are highlighted. Those are the ones that are need more work. And Mark Parsons' comments about suggestions for how to proceed. And then as a group, I think we should decide, okay, look, which are the ones we can productively tackle today? Which one should we start with in particular? And I think that'll be much more productive than trying to synthesize before we have these gnarly topics kind of reduced to something we all understand.
So I myself haven't been on that session yesterday. I would love to, like, for us as a group now to wordsmith and clarify these ideas in the bullets. But I think we should also keep in mind the deliverables that we need to have at the end of this session. And
well, I guess, yeah, sorry, go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, so we're not going to be able as a group now to really totally clean up the bullets as much as some of us would want. Although we can add perhaps, or see if there's consensus with a new set of eyeballs.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. The only thing I'm sort of pointing out with the headings and so on is not spending a whole lot of time wordsmithing if we don't think it's something that we need to have
Agreed.
Going forward. Because at times, yeah, we may go, you know, discuss topics, but, you know, is it something that we would see actually including in the document? So maybe we can do that as part of the discussion, is decide, and also whether or not it's something that's central for the Arctic Observing Summit or more of a general topic. So we had some good discussions last night on general topics, but that may or may not be sort of AOS related.
Yeah, Pierre Luigi had a question, and so I believe the deliverables for this 2-hour session is the two slides, a paragraph, but also mainly working on an outline of the report.
Okay, thanks, appreciate that. So I think, you know, we could even split up into little groups, you know, in the sense maybe the paragraph and the outline, you know, people working on that, and then we just switch or something of that kind. But I think it's good to just start writing, really.
Okay, so I'm hearing a couple of things. One is to just start writing, the other is to have more detailed discussion. So do we have a sense of maybe, do we discuss through the writing?
Or maybe like write a bit, then pause and discuss and like gather forces and then continue.
Yep, that's fine. Do people, again, in terms of organizing, yesterday we were sort of doing it as a group. So if we're going to break it up, do we want to have people who want to grab particular points in here that they want to write on? That was sort of my original thinking about having the headings and then deciding, how we populate those.
But I would vote that the group is small enough we can stay together.
Okay.
I don't know.
Any other thoughts on that?
What else?
Could do. I think we're at that size where we can work together, but I mean, like there would have to be like Peter. I guess you can lead by putting some, for the paragraph, for example, just putting the keywords, and then if whoever wants to write a sentence can, and then we triage.
So that's what I was thinking originally about, if we could have that sort of one sentence or keywords or whatever as sort of headings, and then we could go back to this detail that we have here to populate, recognizing there is some overlap. So maybe as a start, I'll also just introduce what was submitted for the breakout. I won't go into any detail. You can see it in the document, but these were some of the key bullet points that were pulled from the list above. Community building, social and organizational, that we need to sit at the same table, focus on clearly defined use cases, et cetera, et cetera. And then the technical foundational components, interoperability in general, adopt and adapt best practices, et cetera. So I'm wondering if we could start maybe with those as these sort of keywords or key points. Or Jonathan, did you have, again, are there any specifics up here that we want to touch base on before we get into that level of drafting in detail?
No, I think writing's a good idea, and discussions kind of, we have to assume people are okay with the topics as they're listed.
I agree.
Okay, so do the folks who were not here last night want to just, can we maybe take I'll time it as we were doing yesterday, would take our maybe 3 minutes or so just to go through and make sure that we don't have any major gaps that we need to add in particular, or there's nothing that totally doesn't make sense in those points. And then maybe we all who were on last night can also review and try and think about the ones that might need some more discussion.
That sounds good.
Okay, so I will start my 5-minute timer here. And if people can just do that so that we're all sort of oriented, and then go from there. Okay, get started. Okay, we have about 1 minute left. Okay, we are at our 5 minutes. Has everyone had a chance to go through the points?
Yes.
I'll take that as an almost.
So, Peter, there's a cluster of these that Mark highlighted.
Mhm.
Are they numbered? How are we going to refer to these?
Yeah, they're not at the moment, but
No, that's okay. I'll start reading the one.
okay.
I think it's the technical one. It's, oh, actually, no, it's the one that Bill mainly wrote. That's where it starts. It's a
I'm
community
the
one.
problem. Yeah, let's
Sorry.
go. Oh, good.
Use key projects such as polar observing assets.
Yep. So I've
And
just
then
got that on the screen.
if we start with that one, the next two major bullets also need work. So that's the cluster. Those three, I think, if we can get through that, and keep in scope all three, so we're making sure that these points don't overlap too much.
Yeah, sorry, you are talking about the one that says use key projects and then the one right below it? or the bullet or the sub bullet points just below?
Yeah, it starts with just we're going to keep what's in the major bullet, but the discussion is how do we combine the sub bullets that are needed
Yes.
into
Okay. So maybe that could be something that you and Bill could tackle.
Well, I think we need to do it for all three of these.
So
Potentially on the call.
But you mean 3 of the sub bullets, or?
No. Okay, so this one, use key projects such as polar observing. Then the next one is all of these community efforts require coordination.
Okay.
And then the third one is scroll below, the technical one.
Yeah. Okay.
If we could cover those 3, this one is about combining. So so you could say there are 4 of them.
I can sort of feel the flow there in the sort of sense of, let's say, so I'd start with the coordination, saying, the coordination is the key. Recognizing existing assets that exist and federating their capabilities to avoid redundancy, and then crystallizing that inside a cataloging service so that we can scale that approach, something of that kind.
Yep, that makes sense.
Mhm.
Or at least it does to me.
Okay, so do we want to like just branch this off into another document, or just at the below that to wordsmith, or condense rather, not wordsmith? At this
Well,
stage?
I'm wondering if we could spin it off and just take one at a time down to the bottom of the document, just to sort of give us some focus, and also just, if nothing else, to avoid any sort of confusion with what we're looking at.
Okay.
So I'll start with the community coordination, and I'm gonna just pull that out. We do have a record of the document if we ever need to go back to, and just bring us down to the
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And I peeked ahead at the 2 slides in the submitted paragraph. And well, no, I think Peter did a good job of essentially condensing and combining the bullets above into the bullets in the slides.
Are we doing this as prose or more bullet points now?
I would say bullet points,
Okay.
just so that we get through it. I just think if we're doing prose and wordsmithing at the moment,
Okay.
we may not get through it. I would also suggest, and I don't know if we want to get into sort of writing on top of each other, but it relates to the resources and capabilities, but it's just the community as a whole is an object of the coordination. But that's maybe a question mark.
So I wonder if we need to enumerate, since we're starting with this one, it's saying all of these. Can we just list what that refers to?
Right now, Pierluigi, I think is.
I'm trying to rephrase the top just into that like main topic sentence, and it is about coordination and this digital ADC is digital commons, or
No, our Arctic Data Committee.
oh okay, so coordination is like the main theme. The Arctic Data Committee is like, I suppose. So should we leave this as a question, basically saying that certain groups must come together to create that sort of one point of coordination and guidance, or to create a committee, a shared committee?
So we had some discussion on that last night. So this is kind of a bit of an existential question at the moment, is that there is a committee. It has been formed. We've been working, at least for the Arctic, and there's actually one for the Antarctic as well. And so the question is that the body that we see ourselves working under. There's pros and cons to that, or there's some different things, and I'm probably not the best person to sort of provide an opinion on that. So yeah, part of the discussion was, if we say at this point, if we make a statement that we need to make something, create something, then we're probably stepping back quite a few years in our development. Because we did create something, and IASC, SEON, and a number of other bodies endorsed that and have been actually supporting it, funding it now. And so if we say, well, it's not really serving any purpose, then we're going back a few years.
So and this is the ADC. That's the thing that was built.
Yes.
Okay. So can we say so basically, can we say that, you know, an inclusive coordination body is required, building upon the ADC?
I would ask others to speak to that because I think it is an inclusive coordination body.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So to say that it's required, sort of, again, is, to me, is stepping back.
Mm-hmm.
Is to say that we can enhance it or expand it.
Okay, that's good.
But we have the body.
Yeah. My input yesterday was, this is about leadership, not authority. So in that kind of business model of leadership, you have this concept of early adopters. So you could cast the ADC, and I'm not involved in that, so I'm not speaking from experience, but you could say ADC has been early to adopt these, to tackle this coordination challenge. And now we're approaching the next phase, which is to get buy-in from the larger community. And then the third phase, of course, is when you're maturing and you get buy-in from the skeptics or the holdouts. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with that maturity model of.
Is that adequately captured in what Pierluigi is writing now?
We'll just maybe let it settle here, but
Sure, yeah. The ADC has been pivotal. It really has, and particularly the Poe Data Forum and all the other meetings. And so I like the language there of enhancing and extending.
yeah, and I like the model that you put forward, Jonathan, because I think we're at the end of the second phase of that, if I understand it correctly, in that those logo clouds and that I've been putting up is that the ADC has not been working as a single entity. It's been bringing together dozens of different entities who I think have bought into it and are showing up and fully engaging. There may be a few holdouts, but I think more what we're seeing is there are a few bodies that don't know about the activity. However, that is, I caveat that with the, I don't know with respect to federal agencies, for example, they tend to, not just in the US, but elsewhere, often they may live in different spaces than the others that we're running into in the research community or geographical communities.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Does this make sense? What's being written now? Or Jonathan, I mean, actually you and some others who have not been involved, I think can provide a very great feedback or great perspective on this, coming in, what you're seeing or what you're seeing as the gaps and needs.
Yeah, I don't know why I haven't been involved. It's just I'm representing one of those federal agencies, so maybe that's why. I don't know.
Sorry, go ahead. Sorry, I cut you off, Jonathan. I didn't realize.
No, I'm good. I was just rambling, really.
No, well, I think this came up at the IARPIC meeting that we had a couple of weeks ago as well. So I think we should have a component here, which is enhancing communications and outreach. Because there were a couple of people on the call who say, "Oh, we haven't heard of any of this," but there are others who've been involved and so on, and so we just recognize that there's definitely a need to enhance that and bring even more people together.
Yeah, I think also what's helped a lot in the past is having cross fertilization, if you will, some of the same people on both. And generally speaking, that is an organic component of linkages, cross-fertilization linkages and communication.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in some cases, it's maybe encouraging the enhancement of the communication to these, what I considered the national coordinating bodies, which is how I ended up getting involved with IARPIC, and trying to use those to then get the message out or to get engagement, because we don't have a big insight, for example, into Department of Defense, and that was one of the ones that was brought up as doing a whole bunch of different things, but that a lot of people in the community were not aware of, and vice versa.
Yeah.
Maybe it's to stress to the laggards, if you will, people who are in the late majority, why this is necessary for them to engage. It's like the so what?
Yeah.
Why does it matter to me?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I think it's great.
If we put in something like a word like formalize, that often helps, because then you think, okay, this is going to be the point of contact for, and then we pick it up here, for things like the Ocean Decade and others. Then people want to be included. If we say, look,
yeah, I think that's really key, Pierre, because that came up a couple of times in our sessions as well, in terms of formalizing, institutionalizing at some level, recognizing what Jonathan said about leadership and so on. But there is a component that if it's not more formalized, then when we're thinking about the roads process and all kinds of other things, it's more difficult to engage in those things, or even with groups like IARPIC and so on in different countries.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that will help with buy-in from organizations like mine is having a demonstrated way to get things done. We have a need. We're very needs oriented. So if we can say match up this partnership as a mechanism to get to further our organization's needs, then we'll do it. But if it's kind of out in the ether still, it's not yet clear what exactly the payoff is for engaging, then we probably won't do it.
Mm-hmm. So how about an SOP sort of thing, like create standard operating procedures within the ADC to bring, well, to affect change, or to what's the language that your agency would respond to there?
Well, this is really for strategizing here within our group. What I think we need to do is show, elevate successes, and almost like a reward structure within ADC to say, these are examples of what we've accomplished and what we can do within this group.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll see that at our organization and say, we want to do that as well. This is a forum where we can get that kind of work done.
Okay, so about like endorse through formal ADC processes, or a formal ADC process. Exemplary actions and demonstrations of what I'm just going to throw in like digital transformation. I mean that's kind of weird. No, of impact.
And that'll be a good point that we can list many of those. And we also have a lot of this already in place. So we have a terms of reference, we have a structure, we have a working model that's been quite successful. So the semantics working group, for example, was spun off by the Arctic Data Committee under that recognition of the approach is to have an overarching committee, but then focused working groups and so on. So we can list that in our details if we just want to sort of highlight here what we want to add. We also, maybe if we want to put in a bullet point, that we do need to highlight that any success to date has been through collaboration, and particularly with a number of polar and global organizations. So it's not comprehensive, but we have, for example, WMO, GEO, SCATM, SUSE, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, so should we put that in here, like within the fourth bullet point? So you mentioned SUSE.
Well, actually, let's put that a bullet point above if we could. And I'll just stay out of the text so we're not getting confused, but because these are already established relationships, and I think the next bullet point makes a lot of sense that we're not there yet, though.
Hey, Peter, just brainstorming here. We, if ADC had like a how to get involved page, web page, where that lists like the way that topics are identified, that projects are spun up, is there a way to fund ADC to do work?
Well, yeah, there absolutely is, but that's where we have this gap that Ruth was bringing up a number of times yesterday. Is, this has all been done, but it's been done almost entirely through volunteerism.
No, I know, but I'm talking about, do you have a web page that describes?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'll put it in the chat window. It's been up.
We can see your screen.
Yeah, so the Arctic Data Committee, and it's not 100% up to date, but it links also to the Polar Data Forum, the meetings, conference calls, conferences, activities, core projects, including federated search. Not all of these. The interoperability experiment is actually a bit dated, but it's what we're talking about as use cases. And then the vocabularies and semantics working group and so on. About us, what's our purpose, background, structure, membership. It definitely needs to be enhanced, improved, because again.
Okay, but think of like, this web page is great, and keeping it updated is important. Just from a new user's perspective, they want to see this is fresh content, so they know it's active. But they need an on-ramp. So, if they see it's kind of an established group and don't know how to get involved, think of like you go to, all right, what happens if you click on that?
Yes. So I hear what you're saying, though. I think, Jonathan, first of all, yeah, we need exactly that, and we need all kinds of additional resources to make it really, really spin or work, more effectively. But one of the biggest gaps has been the communications and outreach, because the fact that you're just seeing the site says a lot.
I've seen the site. I just didn't really understand the organization.
Okay. But that says a lot too, and it's a valid, I think, comment. So if we can capture that in our statement here, that we have a foundation that appears to be, or I would say is working, based on feedback. However, we need to we need to take it to that next level that you point out of getting those people who are not yet
Yeah,
involved.
it seems like there's a lot of these community engagement professionals. ESIP has one. Megan's her name, I believe. And then from the Arctic Data Center, she was on the call yesterday. So I don't know if we need to fund a full position for that, but somehow getting resources on it. So there's community engagement, and that's integrated in the communications on the website, and also it's like a person people can reach out to and communicate with.
Yeah, and that's what we've been shooting for. We're not there yet in terms of finding the resources to fund, and unfortunately the people like Aaron and others who are doing a great job aren't in a position to volunteer, from their groups to do that sort of thing.
But at the same time, if there is like sort of standalone, let's say a good digital, like a wizard almost, like which provides good startup documents, onboarding guidance, etc. All that our partners would have to do is just point people to that. And I'm sure like quite a lot of groups would be happy to do that, to say, hey, look, take a look at this sign up wizard.
Yeah, that's great. So we could add that as a really concrete recommendation that I think is manageable to under our current resourcing.
So I'm putting it up here as a sub-point of the inclusiveness argument.
Okay, that's great. And the other thing there is we would make the distinction between the committee writ large and the working groups. So if you go to the semantics working group, there's instructions there on how to engage with that and so on, but less so at the higher level, at the general committee level.
So of the ADC and its working groups, or should we just leave the ADC out for the moment? So of the ADC's working groups, just direct people
Well,
there.
no, I'd say the ADC and its working groups, because one of the challenges we have now is we have a lot of buy-in at the working group level from our community, but we need more at the committee level, which is probably less exciting for a lot of our folks.
I'll bring in one last point that comes from my corporate perspective. This is all about maturing the organization. So I don't know if you like that term, but it's synonymous in some ways with enhancing, extending, formalizing. That's all a maturing process.
I love that language actually, because it says what's needed without suggesting that we need to start from scratch. And I do get a bit concerned that if we say, yeah, we need to start from scratch, we can do that, but it will, I think, set us back. So maturing sort of says, yeah, we're not there yet. We're not full grown adults, but let's keep it moving.
So should we say, instead of better develop and communicate, we just use it there? Mature the onboarding process?
Yeah, that's great.
Sounds good.
No, it's fine there too, but this whole topic is about maturing it. So I'd put it even under one, maturing the coordination of resources, or wordsmithing it somewhere in there.
Maturing the coordination of existing. Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. And we can drop out existing because it's already there by application, and capabilities. That sounds nice.
Yeah.
And so, Peter, the resources and capacity issues, could you?
So one of the things that we kept coming back to last night and in other sessions, a couple of people in particular, is that in these situations we say this is what's needed, but a number of times it's like, yeah, but we don't have the resources. We don't have the resources. So I agree with that. But the strategy I laid out last night was, if we can say this is the vision and these are the requirements, that then sets us up, if we can agree as a community that these are in fact the requirements, to then go out and seek resources. And if we can get endorsement by the whole AOS process, for example, that then means if I go to NSF or I go to the Canadian government or whomever, we can say, hey, this isn't just Peter or Pierre or Jonathan asking your executive, Jonathan, like for resources. You say the whole community is agreed. But that's where that sentence, if you look at the, sorry, I'm just going to quickly go up. The last sentence of this paragraph that was submitted is, or second last, is we recognize the need for the necessary resource to adequately support all actors participating in the co-production model. So we want to put it out there, but I agree with Mark Parsons last night and maybe others on this call, is that if we put that out there front and center, it's typically just seen as, yeah, well, everybody's in that situation, don't whine.
Mhm.
Something like that. That's some of the things that we were also talking about in the UN Ocean Decade, because UNESCO is thinking about the same things. It's like, you can't possibly fund a global, in their case, a global initiative. But if there's this alignment framework, and that's what the decade sort of is, then whoever has resources at the time, at least the other partners know that if somebody's working on it, it's going to get better for all. So it's like that rising tide lifts all ships analogy.
Yeah, I'm just going to quickly go as well, just as a reference, if we're developing this more fully, is at the architecture workshop we had in 2018, we came up with a document that sort of outlines a strategy for that, or maybe not a strategy as much as principles, preliminary summary report. And that was basically saying, hey, as a community, these are the things that we need to do. So continue collaboration, but also create the shared vision, but then break it into parts and have everybody trying to co-mobilize. I really like that term, co-mobilize resources, etc. So we can also draw on these documents that have come out of the meetings and also the last Arctic Observing Summit, because I think they're just sort of taking us to that next level of the discussion.
Cool.
And I'll go back to the document here.
So I think we've matured that set of bullet points. Do you want to move on to the next block?
Yeah, great. And I think that one is quite foundational, and then everything else should sort of follow a little better.
Should we keep the one above? Like the I think we should probably keep the draft version, or
Strike it out.
strike it out. That's a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, unfortunately, I had sort of cut and paste, but I'll copy and paste this time, and I can go back to the history. So we want to tackle this one. I think that is probably the next logical one, and it's how we're presenting it later in the day. Is we then?
Yeah, I also want to tackle that while we have Bill on the phone.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm gonna leave now.
You can't. You're not allowed.
Okay, and I'm just going to number that one.
I think this bullet started with the idea of bridging across sub-communities within the AOS.
And
a few examples of how to do so.
Could I also throw into Jonathan's point earlier about merging concepts? I think this is also one that we can capture this idea of the importance of use cases and practical implementation.
Yeah.
So if we could sort of capture both, that we need to be working, and this is at the same table sentiment that was in the bullet points, but also that the way that we're going to get things done is through concrete applications. So Pierre, I'll let you take over from here because you're doing an excellent job.
But it's nice if you guys, keep talking at that level, like, how it feels naturally to you, and I'll see if I can then, cast it. So I got that already from this conversation, empower the development of concrete applications. This sort of, we can give those as examples, right? To demonstrate what?
Well, actually, to get things done, I think. To actuate solutions. That's not the right word.
Yeah.
So to demonstrate the visioning of solutions based on, innovation,
Yeah.
something of that kind.
I might suggest what I put on the screen here, just out of the paragraph, is just thinking about, what are we going to get out of this? So I tried to finish that paragraph with achieving the vision will improve access to and reuse of invaluable Arctic data, blah, blah, blah. So maybe just having a number of tangible things that people from outside our community could see as valuable.
So, which provide practical solutions to the needs, or aligned to the mission. Do we have a vision and mission?
Yes, but it should be.
Of the
Well, it depends how you look at it. I think the Arctic DC has a terms of reference that I wouldn't quite call that, and that's somewhat political.
I see.
Because it's what Jonathan refers to as this maturing. It's, as we started out on this, there was a lot of like, well, I'm not sure that we want your body to be it, and so on. And so the mission and vision is often, not always, but it's a confirmed project and or an organizational thing, right? And we weren't at a stage to say we are a community or we are an organization.
I see. So this purpose, though, so I mean, we could just say the purpose and link to that page here. So if you could copy paste that link into the document, then we can just say align to the purposes of the.
And I would say, though, that one of the outcomes of the Polar Data Forum in November of last year was we are revisiting all of that, including the IASK-SEON data policy, which relates to, has things like vision and so on. And I'll just quickly, sorry to take you off the screen here, but so this, I'll just put the link in once I find it. Go back. The Statement of Principles and Practices for Arctic Data Management, which has a lot of, I think, what you're thinking about here.
And does this then trickle down to SEON as well?
It's been cross-referenced to SEON, basically, because when we first started, we were a SEON IASK, and SEON just said, that fits with what we're aiming to do as well, although we agreed in November that we need to revisit because it's a few years old now.
I'd try to remember to make a suggestion about that later.
Okay. So let's see how we do this. So empower the development of concrete applications that provide practical solutions aligned with the purposes of ADC. Then we can also sort of say, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. Are these bullet points oriented towards ADC or SEON in the roads process specifically?
It's I think, Bill, it's both. But I was just going to suggest, I'll stay out of the text, as I said, but what we talked about last night was calling it the Arctic Data Community.
Yeah.
Including the ADC, SEON communities, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I don't want to, have the misconception of having this only be about the ADC.
Absolutely, and that's, I think, why we have actually made some progress, because we tried to do that over the years.
But I think that's where that transformation, let's say, of the ADC would be useful, because at least this is something I hear from work with across the UN Decade thing. It's nice to have clear contact points, because if it's just the community, it becomes almost impossible to get things done, right? That's why, like, the reinvention of the ADC to be like naturally by default inclusive of the others. I don't know how the politics work. I know it's but without that, it's just really spinning wheels. Often, not always, but I'm speaking as an outsider here.
Yeah. So I see a couple wordsmithing issues. Arctic Data Community will confuse people as the term.
ADC. Typically, Arctic Data Community, those three words are not capitalized.
Yeah, I was just going to say that.
Okay.
And that, I think, manages the confusion a bit.
It could also be generalize to the Arctic observing community?
Yeah, so I mean, this is where we want to be aware of the distinctions there. And yeah, and then a separate bullet point being bridging those two.
And the whole bullet should be data focused, right? So
I put in digital needs here, like the digital needs of the Arctic observing community. That might help us.
That's a nice one, I think, because
okay.
this is another discussion that we're going to reopen that comes out of our discussions here, but also many others, which is the idea of sitting around the same table. Is my comment, you've heard it, Bill, a bunch of times, is it's two sides of the same coin, right? And it's a bit of a false separation. It's necessary at some level, but it's a bit of a false separation.
Yeah.
And that's why when Hanela was with Khan, we were coming up with our own backroom sort of strategy to say, okay, we got to figure out a way to do this together.
Hanela was with Khan?
She was one of the co-leads, yeah. Hanela Savella, I don't know if you know her.
Right.
Interact.
Yeah.
And then she sadly stepped away, but I think now, and Miko's on the line as well, Miko and Sandy and the SEON executive and certainly the IS executive are open to these conversations, but how we do that. But.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is just my perspective, but this AOS Summit by itself separated the two, rather than having pieces of the roads process explored through bridging of those two communities.
Yeah, and it's something we're going to have to manage because even the AOS itself is kind of becoming its own entity that relates to SEON but isn't SEON and so on. So I think it's some stuff we have to navigate, right?
Yeah, that'll be really interesting to see how that evolves for sure.
But I think it is what it is.
And functionally, sometimes you have to be in your separate room and then come back together. Yeah.
So I try to synthesize this tagging data places into something a little bit more high level there. It's true, of course, the data won't get lost over, but this idea, this is working well in the ocean too, that all of that, what that means is we're creating all of these entities will be contributing to the same map of digital resources. That's how we can lead into the catalog discussion too.
Is this going to be the same bullet as bridging between observing and data communities and see at the same table, or is that going to be a separate bullet?
I think I have a feeling like a couple of them can be merged or rearranged. So I think we just keep going. If you see a link right away, maybe you can highlight that or bring it down.
Well, we could bring in some of those examples from above.
If you spot them, just bring them down and see what we can do. Maybe it's natural here.
So actually, the way that Pierre rewrote this, it's much clearer to me. I'm responsible, at least for the first part of that's sub-bullet, where I was introducing the concept of places and tagging. And so I think we can move that.
I saved that carefully where it needs to go within the drive folder for the new working group. That's like, and that, I wasn't aware of that catalog. That's really a good one. so yeah, that's a good point.
For the data components here, a question particularly for you, Bill, too, and for the others is, as we've talked about, we have the existing Mapping the Arctic Data Ecosystem initiative, which recognizably is not the full solution because it's not live, because we don't yet have the data centers, repositories publishing what they need to publish. And we've talked about that in relation to your initiative, Bill. So do we put in text like that that's a building on, or do we say we need an entirely new initiative? Because that was the very first thing the ADC decided in 2014 was exactly that bullet point, that we need a distributed, co-owned, and coherent map of digital resources. And so we've not achieved it entirely, but we're working on it.
as a start, I'm just going to kind of like include one bullet that has numerous examples. Sorry, that's the digital ecosystem map. What's it called?
Well, mapping the Arctic data
Oh,
ecosystem is the name of the official project that's been endorsed by the community, or at least that's been moving forward. And we have the, the data collection efforts as well as the technology and so on. But I recognize it, and I've been asking, saying, yeah, do we keep that thread going, or is there something else that we want to put in its place going forward? So that's not something we necessarily need to answer now, but that's something we need to think about.
Okay, so I think maybe I think that build upon is it makes sense. Why would we start again, right?
Well, you'd be surprised though, right? So, or maybe you wouldn't. I don't know. It's what you said actually. I think it was your quote, Pierre, yesterday about people start off saying, "Let's not reinvent the wheel,"
and they promptly do.
And promptly do. So I don't have a huge amount of ownership on that right now. I published my chapter. I put out what I consider a prototype. But I am not wanting to take it forward unless it is something that people see, right? Because I don't want to throw good money after bad if it's not seen as something. But Matt Jones's comments were right on, though, is to do that and do it well needs to go to that next level. But that's part of the whole schema.org publication, all that stuff.
So how about then, let's say this will synthesize, synthesize progress across ongoing efforts such as the blah, blah, blah. Right?
Yeah.
And I think that synthesize gives us a lot of wiggle room there because if the projects want to continue and also then fly the flag of being interoperable with others, that's great for them. Cool. If they can make it work with their funders, all the better for everybody. If they want to retire the project, but can push over some of the results, like a map that they have, a catalog, that also works. It's part of the synthesis. Okay, so I think that kind of works now. I think as another kind of sub bullet point of that's where we have this sort of so this will prioritize creating a session. This will synthesize projects. Emphasis will be given to, I'm trying to get this bit in here, this merging to, emphasis will be given to, or maybe that's already getting too low level, I'm not sure, but.
Yeah, it's all right.
Efforts to allow mobilization of information from many angles will be I don't know, prioritized. And then the many angles will be, or many dimensions, that will be, for example, semantic technologies, GIS, and what other things are like primarily used?
I would say just modeling in general, which is often not GIS.
Like deterministic modeling, right?
Yeah, and using MATLAB, R, things like that.
Okay, so analytics.
I would put in a plug for knowledge graphs.
So I'll put that over here. Semantic technologies and knowledge graphs. They kind of blend into each other. Sorry, I typically, as you can tell, I typically use British spelling, so you'll have to catch.
I'm with you, Pierre.
Oh, good.
We're a colony, right? So.
Okay. I think that gets those 2 points, and then here, this roads process thing. I'm not sure where that should go. No, that's a standalone point, of course. But what was the intent here? Just include the idea that the roads.
My recollection is just that the intention was just part of this was to be linking to all of these initiatives like roads, but also linking through practical use cases, etc.
Okay, that's actually really good. So basically, this will prioritize, and then we can also say applications and solutions, referencing the topic sentence at the top, applications and solutions which are aligned to the priorities identified in regional strategic frameworks, including the roads process. Roads like that, yeah.
And
Including
to
those.
cross-link subcommunities within the roads process.
Please add the phrasing. Or what was it? Say it again?
And to cross-link subcommunities within the roads process.
Okay, which are aligned to the priorities identified in regional strategic frameworks, including the roads process, allowing
bridging,
allowing digital innovation to better interlink their elements. Something like that?
Sure. As long as we have somewhere else the whole thing about bridging between the observing and data communities.
Okay. So observation to better interlink. Let's just list it: observations, data science, and policy. We can even just go as far as that, because again, the societal benefit areas, etc., are there.
I would throw in indigenous communities and organizations as well. Well,
there was a good point raised by I believe it was Andy, who says it's good to identify these sort of things, but this emphasis on there's a bit of an overemphasis on the indigenous. So I don't know how to handle this correctly. So it's a very sensitive space. I'm aware, right? So I'm wondering like what the right phrasing here is. Like
so I was just going to suggest
I'm getting slightly.
Residents.
That sounds cool.
Yeah, that's one that seems to be okay. It was actually Lil Alessa who made the point.
Right.
I think it's a very valid point that Lil made, but it is a very contentious one.
Yeah. But I do, because I hear both sides, because sometimes the word is just used and it's sort of like lip service. It feels like it, from the outside again. So I think it's nice to say something like that, Arctic residents.
Yeah, and I suspect somebody will come back and say we want to explicitly identify indigenous because of it is very loaded.
It is, but I mean, if somebody approaches us with that, then we respond, of course, right? And it's a space we have to figure out. We can. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. That's nice. Should I cross out the top one then?
Sounds great.
Great.
So I anticipated the next bullet will be technology oriented. So we've got the two community ones, not the only two, but the ones that we wordsmithed, and then you can have a section on technology.
Yeah, grab it.
Okay, so do people have a vote on what they think? Is it main technical catalogs 22? Sorry, or did you already do that, Jonathan? If you did, that's great.
No, I haven't done that.
Okay, so yeah, no, I'm trying to scroll around here. So yeah, do we want to start with 22 and bring that down?
Sorry, that's my dog.
And I think people who are on the call and want to be adding, now that we have that tentative distinction, we can be bringing down the other community bullets that are kind of not highlighted.
Yeah,
I
and
was just
would,
wondering. Oh, sorry, Peter, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. You go ahead, Shannon.
Mine was a little off topic. I was wondering if we had any technical points dealing with IK.
Yes and no. I think we have a broad space for that, but one of the things probably we should do there is say that we need to work with those who can represent the knowledge holders for the specific requirements.
I don't think it's needed for today's talks, but I think when we develop the full report, we'll have to get into that, and maybe also some of the data needs around social sciences.
Yeah, and just very quickly, Shannon. So this is how this approach emerged when I did the ministerial, is that we had sort of a general slide on the what I call the community writ large that you see here.
Exactly.
And then I had 3 slides. And then we threw in this one here. We had this one, which we thought was important, which is looking at that. But that's where I think, yeah, as we develop this statement, we can reach out to Working Group 3 and others and say, hey, what's the best way? And that's exactly what I did for the ministerial. I went to ICC and a bunch of other orgs and said, hey, can you help me work this text through? And that seemed to work really well.
Okay, when I was working through some of this, I didn't see that we had mentioned that a lot. And I was like, well, we should probably have it in there somewhere.
Yeah, I don't think we
So-
had any specific technicals. I think it was more just, that we need to consider that in general.
Yeah, and to work with the communities. Okay. Thanks, Peter. I just wanted to check in.
Okay, no, that's a great point. I just want to make the point as well. This is, we want to go as far as we can go, but even if we can do exactly what we're doing, which is get a framework started and a methodology, we have a couple of weeks, probably at least a week, if not 2, to sort of really flesh this out. So I think now if we can just get, the key ones, that would be great.
Absolutely.
Just in the interest of our, we have about 35 minutes left or so. Sorry, did we grab something and drop it in for development? So under technology, what are people's thoughts on the best first one to address?
It's that cluster. So there was a right after the one that, this one, 22.
Yeah, so maybe I'll start with 22 and we'll bring that down.
Just keep in mind these two, 22 and 23, are to be consolidated.
Yeah, okay, so I'll bring both of those for reference and then Pierre can work his magic.
There's a side effect of being in this UN ocean process for such a long time. Sort of like you start thinking like this.
Well, it's great, and it's also very helpful for me because I'm running on 3 days of fumes now.
I can imagine.
Yeah. So one just background, and then I'll shut up for a little while. Is I think the key here, as I was taking notes and I first dropped these into the list, is that one of our common, or the themes that we've been working on, the working groups, has been around federated search. So we wanted to have that in there under the technology. And what we've been arguing is that even what your point was a very good one, Pierre, about AI and ML needing the discovery and data services and so on. So I think key is having federated search somewhere in there for technical, and then everything on top of that, getting into the data interoperability and then applications and so on. And that's what I tried to put in the bullet points in the slides.
So I think, with the 2 community points we have above, we can now, like the technical point is like, okay, what is the backbone of this, right? So, so create a sustainable and highly distributed. So it's participatory. So let's just start with the sustainable. Create a sustainable technical backbone. Sustainable. So therefore, create a lightweight so that it doesn't scare people away. Lightweight, implementable. And maybe then broadly implementable, so that gives the idea. So people who are technical won't freak out that we're going to ask them to reinvent their systems. Broadly implementable and sustainable technical backbone to enable. So would these be numbered points above, or this would be then written? So
ultimately, it'll be paragraphs.
Okay.
It'll be basically a report, several pages.
So I'm just going to say the points above, and then we'll say like rephrase when drafted fully. Okay. Create a lightweight, broadly interoperable, and sustainable backbone to enable whatever we have above. And and support federated solutions such as federated search and discovery, something like that. And then we have a search, discovery, and action across interoperable I'll say resources for the moment, but we can, it's a long sentence, I know, but we can work on that. And then we have one of these things. Do we say like, now this will prioritize? Are we setting up for one of those things? Highlight foundational nature. Or is this more like we anticipate this will focus on, or is it more of that kind, or is it more, or we recommend? Is it a recommendation now?
We will, that is one of the key points that has come up for our submission, is they're going to be looking for recommendations.
Okay.
So whenever we can say our community recommends.
That's good. Our community. So to meet these needs, our community recommends, and then we have a set of things. So the first thing, I guess, I mean, we talk about this catalog. I think this is where this whole catalog thing comes in, right? So our community recommends, and then we say building, let's say, extensive, complete, comprehensive catalogs of activity, of actors, activities, and resources that may be referenced and referenced, maintained, and developed by all stakeholders.
When you say resources, are you thinking data resources or resources writ large?
Writ large, I'd say.
Okay, because somewhere I think we want to just have to make it clear to people that there's also the data component, because the current catalog of actors and activities is more along the lines of above, this sort of ecosystem model, but somewhere just referencing data as well.
Okay. This catalog will also include digital resources to allow automated machine-to-machine, we can get a bit technical now, and a little bit sort of fancy, machine-to-machine discovery and communication to support, and then this is where we can put in artificial intelligence solutions.
So this can maybe come later, but this is a part where we might want to think about a multi-tiered approach, because over the years I found this sort of vision is what has been put forward for at least since the International Polar Year, and some people eat it up, and other people, it, as you point out, scares them and makes them say, "Whoa, we're just a simple data repository. We're great at downloading data and so on." So
and let's do that first. Let's do that first. So adopting a tiered approach to technical, to let's say technical. To participation. Allowing
and adoption or something like that.
Allowing to participation, allowing actors with a wide range of capacities to contribute to and benefit from progress, technical progress, something like that kind. I think that's really important. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Great.
Okay. We also recommend building comprehensive catalog factors, resources, our stakeholders. So actors can self-declare their assets and no, I think that's getting too detailed. That's more like a manual. So we kind of got AI in there now. Okay. This catalog will also include digital resources to allow automated machine. Okay. Any other points that, what else do people see in that, in these notes above that we should now dispel? I see the roads in there and schema.org and all of that.
I'll just throw out the platforms and model-based science. I think is worth bringing out. That's what Lil brought up more at the IARPIC meeting a couple of weeks ago, and then David Arthur's presented yesterday.
So would that now be another subpoint?
It could be a subpoint, yeah.
A subpoint, or it's a standalone point?
I think it's just that this comprehensive catalog, this infrastructure that we're talking about would serve AI, but it also can serve things like platforms and model-based science.
Okay,
so I put a little bit in there about comprehensive perspectives right before AI.
Okay.
I like a little bullet there, yeah.
Is that another point, or is that inside the platforms and model-based science point?
Comprehensive perspectives?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's generally speaking for a strategic assessment and integration.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So then let's say like the catalogs. The catalog will be tuned to the strategic perspectives articulated by stakeholders in the region. Something of that kind, something of this, including, and then maybe this is where the roads process, those identified in the roads process, but also those identified by very local initiatives, or just local initiatives, by local groups. That just shows that inclusivity thing again without saying inclusivity again, perhaps, right? So the platforms and model-based science, so platforms I get, so like platforms, infrastructures, and similar resources will be okay. So I think the recommendation, so one of the things like in our institute, we were asked to register in the Otis catalog of sources, of data sources. And it wasn't a very pleasant experience. I mean, it is old, and of course with the new funding that UNESCO has, they're going to update the process. But it's really tedious, and people are like, why are we doing this, basically, right? It's kind of boring. So I think one of the things there for people who are running platforms and infrastructures, we have to say, look, we're going to give you guys an API. It's going to be very easy. Update a little entry that you have on GitHub, and it will automatically be refreshed, So I think that's something kind of technical that addresses this platforms and infrastructures point, right? So sort of like a lightweight programmatic interface for platforms, infrastructures, and similar resources to update their information in the catalog with minimal overhead. Will be created. This could be this could even just be a schema.org. This could be leveraging schema.org somehow. So that they'll do it anyway, in a way. So the model-based science thing now has sort of fallen out, but for platforms, infrastructures, and similar resources, maybe we can put it in as a parenthetical statement, sort of like along with their, I don't know how to phrase this properly. So I don't know where to fit up model-based resources. Could you help out?
Yeah, I don't know that we have to think about model-based as much as the analytical sort of cloud-based platforms. The model-based, it was coming from Lil's sort of vocabulary. And I get, that what she then shared with us was essentially modeling done on a platform.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So, I think, she was really pushing the idea of model-based science, but that can also be a bit confusing because science has been based on models for many, many decades, centuries.
Okay. We can sort of put it here at the end, like where we talk about AI. So
Yeah.
we use those keywords, model-based solutions, and it fits there. So like that's also where the machines would be talking to each other. Okay. And then at a higher level, I mean, we're going back up. So leverage widely adopted, let's say, exchange formats such as schema.org to reduce duplication and standards proliferation, just so that we have that in there. There's more on that, I guess.
There must in other bullets be something about federated search.
Yeah, I think
we have it up here.
Sorry, yeah, okay.
But I mean, if there's something more specific at the very top. But
there we go. Federated solutions such as federated search. Yeah. Okay. Great.
But if you want to make a particular bullet point, certainly let's try.
Bill, do you think the schema.org reference gets us there, or starts to get us there?
Certainly in the past, there's been, quite a bit of elucidation about the importance of federated search and how to go about that. And I don't know if that's really captured. I see what you've been doing, Peter. I think maybe we don't have a whole lot about federated search.
Oh. And this is the document, and recognizing we're not submitting this immediately, and this is the one where we can put in some detail. It still has to be, relatively accessible, but it can go down into specifics and weeds. And this might translate into a heading with some recommendations. So if we can think about this actually document as it evolves, I think back to when years ago we worked on the SCADM strategic plan, and each section had a heading followed by, in an introductory paragraph, some bullet points followed by recommendation. So we should be thinking probably for each of these, here's the problem statement or the background, here are some elaborating points, and here are our recommendations to help us move forward. So we don't have to do that right now, but something for us to be thinking about.
Yeah, I guess like all of these sort of individual modules can be farmed out into those sections later. It's small enough, I think.
So Peter, I highlighted it. I don't know if we're done with that technical one, but if you scroll above, just above the technical section, this was their comment from Ruth on this, combining these.
Yep.
And if we have time that we can get to that, or we can finish the technology.
Why don't we have maybe a stop at 10 minutes too on any technology remaining? Gives us about another 8 minutes, and then we'll do. I think that's a good way to wrap up. That's the one I think needs some nuancing. It's the one that's critically important, but careful.
And just FYI, I've been copying down bullets as you've been focusing on the technology piece. There are a lot more community bullets that I've been pulling in.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I see them. Those are good, especially the rewards thing.
Yep.
Okay, so I think also in terms of mentioning things like schema.org, it's kind of strategic because, you know, I had, as many of us have had conversations with them, and as we know, they're not going to really hand over or extend one of their standard checklists or so, unless they're confident that this community that they're handing over to or pushing an update really represents an entire region. I think in the Arctic, it might even be possible that we could get that level of representation, shall we say, if we get the higher level points, the community points more done, we can have that credibility. You know, that's a mid to long term thing, but I think it's worth strategically planting the seed here.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and that was the conclusion
Meaning
as well. Sorry, go ahead, Bill.
Meaning through ESIP science on schemas?
Oh, I mean, it's going to be multiple groups. So ESIP also is trying to like see, you know, can we talk to schema.org as a broad community? And they have very good reasons for moving so slowly. They need to make sure it's like super generally applicable, right? And then the question is like, do you represent enough of the community, the market share, so to speak, that if you push an update to say, can you update the list of Arctic ecosystems or something? They're going to say, okay, this is a community that represents those stakeholders. So gradually, in combination with the community points we have above, it may come to pass. But right now, by actually just tipping the hat, it's over here. Tipping the hat to that, it's showing we're thinking along those lines. I think it's good.
As we develop, we can reference the past documents I mentioned as well. So the Geneva workshop, we essentially established that every participant there agreed that schema.org would be something that they would adopt. So at least,
it was a big piece of the Polar Data Forum.
Yeah, and then we followed it on. So that's essentially at least the polar community attending those workshops, a done deal. But we could sort of expand it through this mechanism here to say we have a core who've agreed on this, and we now need to keep moving that forward.
Certainly, Ruth would have a lot to contribute here.
I'm putting in a point here. It's kind of like mirroring our community points above, this idea of coordination across different things. So we just do that on the technical side too. That that is as interoperable as possible with solutions being developed in other regions and communities. So for example, this would be, we could mention it, Peter, I certainly don't mind if you remove this if you want to keep it general, the ocean data and information system catalog.
Yeah, I think concrete is great.
Yeah.
And resonates well with the folks outside our community.
Otis Cat.
So you look right below this. This was another technical point.
That's a good one. That's important.
Maybe cross-reference to make sure you're not duplicating it.
And that's where I was trying to get to, Pierre, with
with the
data
AI.
as a service platforms, AI, ML, et cetera, changing how we do research. And we also discussed last night that that's really related to education. You brought that up a number of times as well.
Right. Okay, good. So let's take this technical backbone thing and put it after that, because this is more focused on that. So over here. So this is on our, the community recommends. Okay. The community recommends, let's say platforms and services, platforms and infrastructures adopt data as a service. Data and what is it? So data
as a service.
And
infrastructure as a service.
Infrastructure as a service models or approaches rather. So that's DAS and IaaS respectively. Two, let's see this. So what's the main benefit there? Like to allow stakeholders with without compute capacity to perform cutting edge data science, including AI, so machine learning. Let's just be very machine learning at across very large, or I don't want, I sometimes want to say big data, but I don't want to say big data. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because we often talk about that as the long tail is super important in our community
So,
as well.
So petabyte scale data sets. So to allow stakeholders without compute capacity to perform, and, okay, that's it, and educate and conduct education and training at the forefront of data science or distributed data science applications or something. That sounds nice and marketable.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. That's it. Okay. So can somebody explain to me this point? So this I mean, just this rings bells for me from the Ocean process about like tailor-made outputs to different communities and different stakeholders, because like policy people aren't and the public, they're not going to want the raw data or the ML code, but they do want to be able to play around with the dashboard, for example. Is that the direction?
Yeah, this came up as well as products in our notes, that sort of product layer. I didn't write that though, so I don't know.
So let's see if we can do that. Sort of like our community recommends creating a range of products from a digital commons, which are tailored to the needs of end users. End users. So I've always wondered, end users, is it hyphenated or not?
I tend to, but I think it varies.
Well, I think it's a noun there rather than an adjective.
All right. It doesn't need to be, right? It's like end user subsystems would be hyphenated. Okay. Yeah. Right. Create a range of products from an emerging digital commons, which are tailored to the needs of end users, including, so let's say Arctic policymakers, residents, and scientists. And then we can say these products, create a range of products and services, why not? These products and services should is a dangerous word, but we can wordsmith, or we recommend, it's better.
Yeah, and
we recommend
time here. So
yeah, these products and services still targeted value from data. Simplifying complex production chains informing. Natural. I don't. I think. Okay, and then we can convert the second one as support training across capacities to allow end users to become co-developers through entry points of variable sophistication, technical sophistication, should we say. I think that's kind of to collaboratively increase the quality of digital outputs. Something like that, because then we get the training aspect. We have the training aspect up there, and we get the idea of verifying, like increasing the curated quality. For example, we can say prioritizing, for example, community curation of machine learning outputs.
Okay, and could I get us to stop there?
Yep.
We just had agreed, yeah, we'd go back up and just quickly revisit a couple of the community points. And I think some
Yes,
of them
that right there,
relate to
the
there.
highlighted.
Highlighted? Yeah, okay. Which relates to the point we were just talking about, which is capacity. So Jonathan, do you want to introduce just what you're thinking?
I'll just tell you what I did. If you highlight it or click on it, Ruth's comment should come up. What we're trying to do is consolidate these because they need to be combined, right?
I think maybe that comment replied to referred to multiple bullets before, and somehow it's been moved around. We might have tackled that.
And
all right. Well, we can reconcile it by removing the comment, resolving the comment.
Yeah.
Or even.
Sorry, go ahead. Well, I am seeing two different points here, though. There's capacity in terms of, if you're thinking about capacity of, the researchers to be able to do this on their own, as Aaron was talking about last night, with NSF Arctic Data Center training, or capacity in communities. But then there's also the capacity for professionals like us to do what needs to be done, and the reward system or lack of reward system to do that. So in a way, I'd sort of say, 10 and 11, parts of 10 and 11 need to be merged, but there's also a separate point there maybe.
Yeah, it's unclear to me, so I think we need to wordsmith it.
I think there might have been more clumped together in Ruth's thoughts there. To channel her a little bit, there's a lot of unfunded mandates. We've talked about this a lot, and how it's like a tricky thing that you have to be carefully diplomatic with, particularly with a lot of soft money people volunteering their efforts without pay, and there's just it limits capacity.
Well, in our next work on this, I think, we'll have to expand on that, the level of unfunded effort relative to the needs, that the whole community agrees on the needs and the importance. There's a dissonance or a disconnect.
Yeah.
Because the response that we received in our sessions during AOS, but I've heard dozens and dozens of times before, is that all of science is about unfunded effort. That service is part of the world that we live in, but that's to Ruth's point, though, is that data managers and other people in our ecosystem have different roles, and they're working under a different model.
Yes, but even within science, okay, we do a lot of unfunded stuff, and as long as we publish a paper, it could work. But at the same time, it won't be sustainable by any means, right? It's not feeding into anything where we can say, yes, my science will always feed this system, and that's not recognized. So, I kind of disagree with that, because science is a business at the end of the day,
I agree. I also disagree. But it
Okay.
is the sentiment that's out there. So we have to craft this in a way that says, we recognize that is a part, but that only goes so far. And as you said, it is a business ultimately, and ultimately, I think Roos Point and a number of us have said, if a number of us in the community at the moment stopped volunteering, there would be probably negative impacts. And Alan Pope and I have started the conversation too about we need to move this from the idea of it tagged to individuals to tagged to institutions and ongoing sustainable efforts.
And I think that's part of it, because we keep talking about making an operational system. You know, I brought that up. If you want an operational system, you gotta fund it like an operational system. You know, the satellite program doesn't work on voluntary effort.
So that's a great conversation, but can we work on capturing people's insight from the discussion? What does this term care and feeding refer to? It's ambiguous to me.
I think that when I first put that in, it's what we were just discussing exactly. It's that things don't run without resources. It's not going to be a sustainable operational system without those resources and constant sustainable resources. And this again has been in a number of our past documents and so on, so I can also look back to those. It's not a new thing by any stretch. So we can either draw text from there or just redraft it in a way that works.
Okay, can we touch on the issue individual to persistent institutions? So what are we moving from an individual to an institution? The responsibility?
Well, a high level of dependence on individual volunteerism, we'll call it for the moment, or individual, voluntary contributions, whatever, to a more sustainable, resourced, institutionalized approach. And I don't like the term institutionalized. I'm just throwing it out there.
How about operational?
Operational,
you can use
operational is better. Yeah.
That also has connotations, but yeah.
Yes, but I'm stuck on that because it seems to be the good balance. Do you have any suggestions for? Production grade is also kind of like the wrong kind of thing. That it's too businessy. It's too about
Yeah, it's a bit too technical in some ways because it's not just about production level services.
Like what's it about? It's about resilience. So like a resilient approach. It's a robust approach.
Sustainability. Or sustainable.
Well, in the term, Bill, you've used getting things done. So we have no shortage of a set of requirements that we've identified, and we are making progress, and we have raised some resources to do it. But to get things done at the level that the community is looking for would require this shift, which is why I sent you the message, Jonathan, about looking at the organizational maturity models and that type of thing.
Okay,
and,
so what?
Who's the badger?
I
Is it you, Pierre?
No, that's not me.
I think that might be Jonathan.
Jonathan.
I was just gonna mention.
It was really good.
I took out institution, and this is more about leveraging organizations and their long-term vested engagement in the Arctic. So it's taking away the individual's initiative. We need to put the initiative on the responsibility, in a sense, on the organizations, and that they will, careers of individuals will come and go, but the organizations or the institutions will remain, hopefully. And
yeah, the example I used with Alan the other day was, he said, well, I don't see a problem here because that's just the way things work. And I said, no, when Volker Rackhold left IASC, Alan Pope was hired to replace him. If somebody leaves Arctic Data Committee, or Bill, if you leave after you get the initiative started, will somebody replace you? We've been trying for more than 2 years to replace me as chair of ADC, and that's not happening. So if it were a more operational approach that we can mature into, then there would be a call out to say, hey, this position needs to be hired into. So. That's the thinking behind it.
Yeah.
Those points look good to me now.
Okay, great.
This redundant. I'm not. How about instead of redundant, they're resilient?
Yeah, redundancy is an important part of resilience.
I understand that, but in the sense that we've used redundancy with slightly negative connotation in several points here, right? To
Okay.
avoid redundancy, so I want to avoid it just so it has an even feel. And because resilience has redundancy as part of it, I think we can do that. So let's see. So transition from the high level of dependence on individual volunteerism to a resilient and sustainable approach. Leveraging organizations and a long-term vested and their long-term. Okay, so then this is more like a comment. So.
Okay. Well, I think we're okay to probably leave that or just move it out into an actual comment or something for now. We do need to wrap up.
Okay.
Because we have a pretty hard stop because of the rest of the schedule.
I see. I'll put that as a comment then.
Good.
And what I'd like to do is, I don't know the level of effort any of us can, I obviously need to, but what others are willing and able to do going forward. But what I'd like to do is maybe book another session like this after completion of AOS in the very near future, either later this week or early next week, to continue the process.
Yeah, and Peter, I just wanted to mention all of the points have been moved down to the new outline.
Okay,
so
great.
With the exception of cleaning up the bulleting in the technical section, I think you can just start working from this list.
Okay, that's excellent.
Cool.
So if people are open to this, and particularly Pierre, you and I have a meeting later in the week. I'm wondering if we could try and take a little bit of time before or after that just to touch base on this.
Yep, happy to.
It may be more productive. I may try and bring Mark Parsons in as well, and just try and get us to what we think is a V0 kind of draft. And then we can share that out to people for editing. And
I think that's really cool. And also so I bounced this in some of the ocean community, the ocean data community, that hey, in Arctic there's like this similar conversations are happening and there's a willingness, and they're really enthusiastic too. So I think we have a thing going.
Yeah. So one thing too, just kind of as a wrap-up comment, is we probably want to connect the ocean dots even. One of our issues that we've often identified is there's so many moving parts because we are already working with the oceans community, but maybe not the same people in the oceans community that you are. As I said, we had at Polar Data Forum, we had a whole oceans data workshop with probably about 25, 30 participants. We've had formal connections with Sea Data Cloud, for example, and some other groups, IODE through Taco and so on. So it'd be good to sort of map that out and then say, okay, who else do we want to bring in the fold?
Exactly. Positioning is key here, like positioning people, resources, interests, and I think there's always a solution somewhere.
Yeah, Taco should definitely be in on that conversation because he's been one of our key leads in the oceans community. So, Taco de Bruin. Great. Well, thanks again to all of you. This has been really a great experience, actually. I thought it was not necessarily going to be given the last minute changes and so on. But I think it bodes well for the future in terms of this type of approach. I will, the AOS will be wrapping up in an hour or so, not quite an hour. And so if you're able, to join that, I'll try and do my best to just give a very high level. We just have, I think, 2 or 3 minutes per working group, something like that, in the final session. But then, we can revisit this, and I think this document that we're working on could give us a really good blueprint going forward that tries to sort of bring together all the various things that have been happening over the last several years. So with that, I thank you for all of the great contribution and look forward to keeping all of this moving.
Great. Thanks, Peter.
Good job, Bill.
Thanks a lot.
Good job, Peter. I'm sorry. Everybody, good job.
Well,
Good job
everybody.
here with your editing. That was awesome.
No problems. I mean, at least some good comes from this life I lead now. Lead now. So it's good. All right, ciao, guys.
Okay.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye.
Okay. Miko, are you still there? And Shannon, I see you're still there. If you can stay on for a moment or two, that would be great.
Yep, still here.
Okay, I'll just check. I think Miko maybe would be the best person to shut everything down. Yeah, so are you able to attend the sort of wrap-up session on the online AOS one? Okay,
Yep, I'm
great. And I
attending
guess
everything today.
okay, and I guess Mary Beth should be there, I presume, as well.
I
So,
can't imagine that she wouldn't.
okay, well, I'm just going to quickly, I haven't had breakfast yet, but I'm just going to quickly do that, and then I'll go back and I'll try and skim through the end of the document and see if I need to just sort of, if there's still a chance, I don't know if Eva's leaving it as a Google document or not, but I'll see if there's anything. I don't think there's anything critical that I need to change in the slides that are, contrary to what we've been doing, but yeah, that's great. And thank you very, 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 very much. I think we can, yeah, we should document this somehow for CCATI.
It worked so much better than I thought it would.
Yeah,
It
and
was actually really good.
Yeah, I do think that we should go back to the CCATI group and say, yeah, we realize that it's not perfect, but it can work. This is different than a hackathon, but it's still related, I think. But also, I think we should just, yeah, highlight the CCATI contribution to this whole process. So great, well, I'll leave it there, and I'll see you probably in about 50 minutes.
Peter, I believe that Eva is leaving it as a Google Slides,
Okay.
so I think you should be okay.
Okay, so I'll just go quickly get some sustenance and then come back and take a look at
All right, we'll see you soon.
that. Okay, great.
Thanks, Peter.
Great.
Bye.